the eighth wonder of the world, a jewel of Russian Baroque, a gift from the Prussian king to the Russian Tsar. For 2 centuries, the Amber Room symbolized not only incredible luxury, but also the fragile friendship between 2 great powers. Created by German masters, it consisted of dozens of panels, completely covered in selected amber of various shades, from honey to cherry red. Mosaics, bas-reliefs, statuettes, everything was carved from this sun-kissed stone. When candles were lit in the room, its walls seemed to glow from within, immersing visitors in a fairy tale golden world. Its value wasn't just high, it was incalculable. But in 1941, the fairy tale ended. When Wehrmacht troops stormed the town of Pushkin, where the room was housed in the Catherine Palace, museum staff couldn't evacuate it in time. The fragile amber panels couldn't be quickly dismantled. They only tried to hide them by covering them with wallpaper. But the deception didn't work. The Germans knew exactly what they were looking for. To them, the Amber Room wasn't Russian heritage, but a masterpiece of Prussian art that belonged back in its historical homeland. With German meticulousness, soldiers disassembled the room in 36 hours, packed each panel into special crates, and sent them to Königsberg, the capital of East Prussia. There, it was triumphantly displayed in one of the royal castle's halls. This was the last place the Amber Room was seen intact. In 1944, as the Red Army approached the borders of Prussia, the room was disassembled again and hidden. Then its traces vanished in the fire and chaos of the war's final months. What happened to it? This mystery sparked dozens of theories that have fascinated historians and treasure hunters for almost 80 years. It was sought everywhere, in the collapsed basements of Königsberg Castle, in secret SS bunkers, in German salt mines, at the bottom of Austrian lakes. Some believed it burned during bombings. Others were sure it was secretly transported by submarine to South America. Still, others believed it was hidden so well it could never be found. The Amber Room became a ghost, the most desired and elusive treasure in history. All this time, the answer may have been lying 80 meters deep at the bottom of the Baltic Sea. In 2020, a Polish company called Baltic Tech, specializing in searching for sunken ships, was conducting a routine seabed scan of Gdansk Bay. Their target was World War II vessels. But one day, their sonar showed something strange. On the bottom, near the coast, lay an object that didn't look like a ship. It was long, rectangular, and seemingly made of metal. It was a sunken railway car. The news sparked interest, but not a sensation. Thousands of wartime objects rest on the Baltic seabed. But one of Baltic Tech's divers, Tomasz Stachura, a history enthusiast, paid attention to the location where the car was found. It was precisely along the route used by the last trains evacuating valuables from Königsberg in January 1945. One of these trains, according to legend, carried the crates of the Amber Room. The legend said that this train was bombed and derailed right onto the ice of the frozen bay. The heavy cars broke through the ice and sank. Could this solitary car be part of that very train? Several years were spent preparing for the complex recovery operation. The car was old, rusty, and could fall apart at any moment. But in May 2024, the operation took place. A massive floating crane slowly, centimeter by centimeter, lifted its discovery from the seabed. When the car appeared on the surface, everyone watching held their breath. It wasn't just a car. It was a German armored special purpose wagon, like those used to transport high command or highly valuable cargo. And on its side, beneath layers of rust and barnacles, were the remnants of an eagle and a swastika. The car was taken to the port of Gdynia and placed in a special hangar. The atmosphere was electric. Journalists, historians, Polish and German authorities, everyone waited for the car door to be opened. No one knew what was inside. Emptiness, ammunition, or... When the rusted hinges were cut with an acetylene torch and the heavy armored door slowly grated open, the first reaction was disappointment. Inside, the car was almost empty. Just some rotted wooden debris, piles of silt, and sea trash. It seemed like another dead end. But when researchers in protective suits entered, they stumbled upon something no scanner could have shown. In the far corner of the car, embedded in the hardened silt, they stood. Several large iron-bound crates. The crates were in terrible condition, but one of them had a metal plaque with a Gothic inscription: Schloss Königsberg, Bernsteinzimmer, Kiste number 7, Königsberg Castle, Amber Room, crate number 7. Hearts stood still. They had found it. But when the first crate was opened with incredible care, a new shock awaited them. Inside, in decaying packing shavings, lay not amber panels. Instead, there were strange, incomprehensible objects. Several dozen small metal discs covered with concentric circles and runic symbols. Several crystal spheres, inside which some kind of mist seemed to be frozen. And a single, perfectly polished black obelisk, about a meter high, which was absolutely icy to the touch, despite the hangar's temperature. What was this? Where was the amber? Had the Nazis transported something entirely different under the guise of the Amber Room? Or was this something that was part of the room but unknown to anyone? The answer came when one of the archaeologists, Dr. Helena Kowalska, began cleaning silt from one of the metal discs. Accidentally, she turned it in her hands, and the inner discs shifted with a quiet click. And at that very moment, something incredible happened. The black obelisk, standing in the center of the hangar, suddenly vibrated, emitting a low, deep hum, and the crystal spheres began to glow from within with a soft, golden light. The very light that visitors to the Amber Room described when hundreds of candles were lit there. Scientists understood. The Amber Room was not just a work of art. It was a facade, a magnificent, ingenious cover for something much older and more powerful. The amber, with its unique electrostatic properties, wasn't decoration. It served as a giant resonator, an amplifier for the energy generated by this strange mechanism. The room wasn't a treasure, it was a machine. But what was it for? And why did the Nazis, who knew its true nature, so desperately try to get it, and then hide it? They hadn't just found a lost treasure. They had activated something that had slept at the bottom of the sea for almost 80 years, and this something began to emit a signal. The signal coming from the activated mechanism was neither sound nor radio waves. It was a low-frequency gravitational wave, immediately detected by all observatories worldwide, from LIGO in the USA to Virgo in Italy. But the signal was strange. It wasn't chaotic, like from colliding black holes, but structured, coded. It was like a message, and it wasn't directed into space, but strictly downwards, deep into the earth. Panic reigned in the Gdynia hangar. Scientists immediately tried to deactivate the device by turning the discs back, but it was too late. The mechanism locked. The black obelisk continued to hum, and the crystal spheres shone brighter and brighter, projecting complex, constantly changing patterns onto the hangar walls, like three-dimensional star maps. It was a map, but not of the sky. It was a map of the underworld. While physicists tried to understand the nature of what was happening, historians, led by Dr. Kowalska, delved into German archives related to Königsberg Castle. They needed to understand what the Nazis knew about the room's true nature. And they found it. In the secret archives of the Ahnenerbe, a report was discovered, written in 1942 by Karl Haushofer, one of the Third Reich's chief mystics and geopoliticians. In the report, Haushofer claimed that the Amber Room was not created in the 18th century. In his opinion, Prussian masters merely reassembled much older artifacts found by the Teutonic Knights during the Crusades to the east. These artifacts, he said, were keys left by an ancient, pre-human civilization that lived beneath the Earth's crust. Haushofer believed the room was not just a machine, but a kind of navigation device and transmitter capable of establishing contact with this underground realm. He wrote that amber, being an organic material, could capture vibrations of life and transmit them as gravitational waves, understandable to those below. The Nazis' goal was clear. They didn't just want to reclaim a work of art, they wanted a telephone line to mythical super beings, to form an alliance and gain access to their technologies that would help win the war. But apparently, something went wrong. Why didn't they use it? Why did they hide it? The answer was found in a note appended to the report in Himmler's own handwriting. Activation experiment failed. No response. But we awakened something else. Object unstable. Immediate conservation and isolation in the deepest vault required. Repeat attempts forbidden until further notice. They had awakened something, and this something seemed to still be active. Meanwhile, the signal from the mechanism changed. It became more powerful, and then it received a response. Seismographs across Europe recorded a series of deep, low-frequency tremors emanating from underground. The epicenter was in Germany, in the Harz mountain range, known for its ancient caves and legends of witches and underground dwarves. World governments were in turmoil. Under the pretext of preventing a man-made disaster, the hangar in Gdynia was cordoned off by NATO troops. All civilian specialists were removed. The project came under military control. They tried to jam the signal by placing the mechanism in a lead sarcophagus, but it didn't help. Gravitational waves passed through any material, and disturbing reports began to come from beneath the Harz Mountains. Local residents spoke of a strange hum coming from underground at night. Geological stations recorded crustal deformation, and one night, near an old, abandoned silver mine, a massive collapse occurred. When rescuers arrived, they found that it wasn't just a tunnel that had collapsed. In its place gaped a gigantic, perfectly round chasm, descending to an unimaginable depth. And from this chasm rose the same golden mist that glowed in the crystal spheres in the hangar. Dr. Kowalska and her small group of scientists, removed from the official investigation, decided to act at their own risk. Using their connections, they gained access to the latest data from satellites scanning the chasm, and what they saw made them shiver. It wasn't just mist rising from the chasm. They were rising from it. These were not beings of flesh and blood. They were woven from light and energy, humanoid silhouettes made of that same golden amber glow. They moved slowly, majestically, as if waking from centuries of sleep. They showed no aggression. They simply emerged and dissolved into the air. They are not material, Kowalska suggested. These are energy projections, or souls. The room wasn't just a transmitter. It was a beacon for lost souls. The Nazis thought it was a phone, but it turned out to be a lifesaver they threw into the ocean of time. But who were these beings? And why were they trapped underground? The answer, strangely enough, came from the Vatican. In the secret archives of the Inquisition, documents were found describing the trial of the Knights Templar in the 14th century. Besides accusations of heresy and worship of Baphomet, there was another, stranger accusation. They were accused of opening a gate to the lower world and releasing lucifuges, those fleeing from light. The document stated that the Templars found an ancient mechanism in the Holy Land and used it to free certain entities that had been trapped underground after an ancient, prehistoric war. The Inquisition, according to these records, didn't just destroy the order. It hunted these beings and, with its rituals and artifacts, managed to drive them back underground, scattering parts of the mechanism, the keys, across Europe. It seemed the Teutonic Order, heirs to the Templars, found these parts and reassembled them, creating the Amber Room. And the Nazis, unknowingly, repeated their predecessors' mistake. They opened the gate again. The situation spiraled out of control. Beings of light began to be noticed worldwide. They appeared for a few seconds in places with large crowds, stadiums, squares, subways, and then vanished, leaving behind only a faint scent of ozone and a feeling of inexplicable anxiety in witnesses. They seemed to be studying humanity. The military was at a loss. How do you fight ghosts? How do you stop something that has no physical body? They decided to destroy the source, the mechanism in Gdynia. An operation was prepared to blow it up. But Dr. Kowalska understood that this would be a fatal mistake. "You don't understand," she shouted into the phone to one of the generals she managed to reach. "The obelisk is not just a transmitter, it's also a lock. It holds the gate open only a tiny bit. If you destroy it, you'll break the lock completely. You'll open the floodgates, and then not a trickle, but a tsunami will come out. Everything that sits down there." The general didn't listen. The order was given. That night, as sappers placed explosives on the crates in the hangar, Kowalska and her team made a final, desperate attempt. They broke through the cordon. They didn't need to destroy the mechanism. They needed to shut it down correctly, and they knew how. Haushofer's report had a last page everyone had missed. It showed not a diagram, but musical notes, a musical sequence. Haushofer believed the key to controlling the mechanism was not mechanics, but resonance, a sound harmony. It was a lullaby to put those who had awakened back to sleep. While the military, confident they were solving the problem in the most direct and effective way, set the charges, Dr. Kowalska's group raced through the night. Their plan was insane, balancing on the edge of science and pure desperation. They carried a powerful sound system and a synthesizer on which one of Kowalska's colleagues, a former musician and now an acoustic physicist, frantically tried to reproduce the melody from Haushofer's notes. It was a strange, unearthly melody, built on dissonances and intervals unusual to the human ear. It evoked both alarm and a strange serenity. Breaking through the cordon, they burst into the hangar minutes before the anticipated explosion. The soldiers, not expecting such a turn, were momentarily bewildered. That was enough time. The physicist connected the equipment, and sounds poured through the hangar. Low, vibrating notes that seemed to shake the very air. The mechanism's reaction was instantaneous. The black obelisk, which had been humming monotonously until then, began to change its hum's tonality, adjusting to the melody. The golden glow in the spheres began to pulsate in sync with the music. The projected star maps on the walls moved, converging into a single point that indicated the chasm in the Harz Mountains. And then, something happened that no one expected. From the chasm underground, which was being broadcast on all screens at NATO's operations center at that moment, the reciprocal flow of golden energy ceased. But instead, something else poured onto the surface. Darkness. Not just an absence of light, but a black, oily substance that swirled and took on monstrous, constantly changing forms. In this darkness, myriad crimson, malicious sparks flickered and died, like eyes. In the minds of everyone in the hangar and the operations center, there wasn't a voice, but a mental shriek full of unspeakable pain and rage. The beings of light were screaming. "You don't understand," this silent scream translated. "You released them, those we hid from, those who consume us." Kowalska understood everything in horror. The Nazis, the Templars, they were all wrong. The Amber Room was not a phone or a rescue beacon. It was a prison, a complex energy lock that held something ancient and terrible underground. The beings of light, the Lucifuges, were not prisoners, but wardens. This was their watch, their eternal curse, to contain the darkness. By activating the mechanism, humanity didn't just open their cell door. It called them for help, and they, abandoning their post, rushed to the call, leaving the main prisoner unguarded. Haushofer's melody was not a lullaby. It was an override key, an emergency protocol that was supposed to return the wardens to their post. But it was too late. The darkness had already broken free. It began to spread from the chasm, consuming everything in its path. The forest around the mine blackened and turned to dust. Animals caught in its zone instantly became shriveled mummies. This was entropy in its purest form, the absolute end. In the hangar, everyone froze, realizing the scale of their mistake. The general who had given the order to detonate watched the screens with a deathly pale face. He understood he had nearly signed the death warrant for the entire world. But the beings of light, answering the call of the melody, began to return. Streams of golden energy from all over the world rushed back to the chasm in Germany. A battle began that humanity could neither see nor comprehend. A battle of light and darkness, energy and entropy, occurring on a level of reality inaccessible to humans. The earth trembled. Auroras of unnatural colors flashed in the sky worldwide. At the center of this cataclysm, in the Gdynia hangar, the mechanism continued to work. Kowalska realized their task now was to maintain the melody, no matter the cost. The music was the rope by which the wardens could return to their post, but the darkness also sensed the source. Black, oily tentacles began to break through the ground directly beneath the hangar, trying to reach the obelisk and destroy it. The soldiers, recovering from their initial shock, opened fire. Bullets passed through the tentacles, causing them no harm. But when one of the soldiers used a flamethrower, a tentacle shrieked and recoiled. Fire, pure thermal energy. It was the only thing that could stand against them. A battle worthy of apocalyptic novels ensued. A small squad of soldiers with flamethrowers and explosives held back the onslaught of the darkness's spawn, protecting a handful of scientists who desperately played a strange, unearthly melody on a synthesizer. They were Earth's last line of defense. The battle lasted several hours. Finally, just when their strength seemed to be failing, a change occurred. The flow of golden energy pouring into the chasm ceased. The last being of light returned to its post, and then a powerful column of pure white light erupted from the chasm, momentarily blinding satellites in orbit. The darkness, as if pulled into a giant vacuum cleaner, rushed back underground. The chasm began to close. The earth shuddered one last time and fell silent. In the hangar, the obelisk stopped humming. The spheres faded. The mechanism was dormant again. The tentacles of darkness turned to dust. It was over. In the following months, the world tried to recover. The events of that night were classified under the label cosmic threat. The official version spoke of a powerful geomagnetic storm, but those who knew the truth understood that humanity had escaped complete annihilation by a thread. The Amber Room, or rather, the ancient mechanism, was placed in the deepest and most protected bunker on the planet, under the joint control of all leading powers. It was no longer studied. It was guarded, because now they knew what it was. It's not a treasure or a weapon. It's a lock on the door to hell. And humanity, in its ignorance, had almost broken it twice. Dr. Kowalska wrote in her secret report, "We searched for a treasure, and we found a responsibility. We thought history was something that had passed, but it turns out that beneath the thin crust of our civilization lie forces far older than us, and our main task is not to disturb their sleep." But one mystery remained unsolved. What is this darkness? Who locked it away? And who are the beings of light? Were they truly wardens, or just as much prisoners as their enemy, doomed to an eternal struggle? And the most important question, will they hold out next time if some obsessed treasure hunter or mad dictator decides to play with the keys to the abyss again? The story of the Amber Room is not over. It has only paused. And somewhere deep within the earth, the darkness slumbers, remembering the taste of freedom.